Are Jesus and Buddha the same person? Of course not. But you know what? They're the same character. What does that mean? My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. There's a story about the Buddha and a story about Jesus where some parts align that you can see that they're replicating a pattern. And in this video, what I want to do is show that and discuss why it would be there. First of all, we're going to approach this in a manner that's kind of different than most people will do it with. We know the Buddha is a teacher. He was a human being that found enlightenment and taught us the way to enlightenment. And everybody is supposed to follow his path to their own enlightenment. You become your own Buddha. You find Nirvana, your own Nirvana, and your own Buddha nature. When we get to Jesus, it's going to be exactly the same thing, but we don't treat it that way. What we're going to do is follow the path of Jesus to the kingdom of heaven within. And when accomplished, we will each find our Christ nature. We're not going to follow these and call ourselves the Buddha or Jesus or anything like that. What we are is travelers on the path, the called hero, the one that wants to turn inward. We therefore have to put ourselves mentally in the shoes of this person and try to understand what cryptically is going on. All right, let me make these comparisons real quick. All right, this is what I've got going on right here. First of all, let me make this statement. Myth and religions are framed on one single template. Watch for the common motifs or repeating teachings between the Buddha and Jesus Christ, which signify the start of the inward journey. These are both cryptic in the same style of mental shifting of analogous verbiage, however, sounding very different without seeing the nested concept. These are all mental and will be managed as a mental step that needs to be interpreted. All right, story of the Buddha. The Buddha leaves all behind and crosses the threshold and enters the space under the Bodhi tree. He fasts and meditates until he has found his inner preparedness. He is tempted by Mara once complete, but resists the temptation of sin. He then gathers his monks, teaches them, and begins his travels to teach others. 500 years later, Jesus leaves all behind and crosses the threshold of a baptism by John and enters the wilderness for 40 days. He fasts and prays until he has found his inner preparedness. What did the Buddha do? Fast and meditate until he found his inner preparedness. Once done, he is tempted by Satan, but resists the temptation of sin in the same way that the Buddha resisted Mara and the temptation of sin there, of greed and gluttony. He gathers his monks, teaching them, and begins his travels to teach in the same way that what happened with Jesus. He gathered his disciples as soon as he got done, teaches them, and begins his ministry to teach. Do you see that those are repeating motifs? The stories go on, but we don't have to make the video that long. Jesus is a religious genre of a repeating monomyth, which impacts the psychology of the human masses, also known as the many called. The few chosen are the ones who actually follow his path, not worship him as the savior awaiting his return. Here's some more examples. The Buddha taught karma. Jesus says the measure you mete into others will be meted back. Those are both cause and effect through our mental judgments. The Buddha says to seek emptiness. Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit. They both mean to resolve that pile of mental judgments that we're living through. We're continually living through them, cycling in past pain as it puts on a new face. Also known as the mote in the eye, the ought against our brothers, the old wine we cannot put into the new wineskins, and more. The important thing now is to know what to do with that story. You can look at it from a distance and think that it happened and call it history. Or you can say whether it happened or not doesn't matter to me. It's a pathway to follow. It doesn't matter. A lot of people have gone that path, not just that person, not just the Buddha, not just Jesus. Anybody who follows that path becomes the chosen person. You become that person, and you cross the threshold and leave the past behind. What is that? We're moving on in life. You get to a point in life where you go, what the hell is my life? Where am I going? What am I doing? You get to that point where, what's that saying? We all have two lives. And the second one starts when we understand we only have one life. There's a point where many people get to where the calling is about you saying, what do I need to do up here? Where did I come from? What happened to me as my life went on? And I remember as a youngster having to grab my pocket knife and cut my brother out of the tree tried to give him mouth to mouth, but I forced air into his stomach and made him regurgitate. Being whipped from, chest to, whipped with a belt over and over as somebody lost control, being told you're stupid, you're damn dumb, you'll never amount to anything, running away from home, being molested. There's a lot of issues at some point in time in life that you're accumulating to become problems for you. That was my life. So I can put myself into this story. All of those things were becoming the odd against my brother, the mote in the eye, the stuff that I was living through, the experiences that haunted me, and I was never taught to resolve them. I didn't know how to. As a kid, you're just accumulating that stuff. Nobody's counseling you and making sure you're okay. So, as you look at this story, you realize that's the person. That's what I must do. I am going to what? I'm going to cross a threshold. I'm going to leave the past behind. I want to leave my environment, whatever works for you. It's going to be different for different people, but it's basically the idea that you're carrying something with you from the past that you need to offload because it's continually causing your life to experience that way. You offload it by changing the perception of it. There's an event that happened and something you've experienced and something you've judged. And because of the way that experience is judged, that creates an emotional, we'll draw it up. Just bring it up in your memory. What does it feel like? That's exactly how it's stored. And that, as you go through life, whether it's shame or hurt or anger or something like that, as we go through life, that seed of energy is going to continue to be triggered. It's going to continue to be, we're going to see a continual experience of something over and over again, but it's based on the nature of that, what we're holding up here. So to cross the threshold really represents the idea that we're turning inward to the mind. This is it. We're entering the narrow gate right here. Outward, all the directions lead to where? Destruction. You're waiting for Jesus to come. That's what Paul said. That's not what Jesus said. You follow Jesus's footsteps. That means you turn inward. We're leaving John that represents our old self behind, who passes us along. These are iterations of us. The disciples are going to be qualities that we carry. All right, so we're going to enter into there and stay when? How long? What happened to you? What does it feel like? How long does it take to resolve it? 40 years in the desert, 40 days in the wilderness, 40 till the time it's done. How long did it take to flood the world? 40 days and 40 nights. We've got patterns of things going on in the Bible that are teaching us something psychologically if we can analyze what they are. But the analogous conceptual ideas of the story that's occurring with those 40s need to be understood. So that 40 represents turning into the mind until the time it's resolved. What is it? Something big, something old, something very buried, something that's supported by a lot of other stuff, or maybe just one thing you resolve it and go, I wish I'd done that years ago. It might be something simple. But in all cases, that's it, going into there. And then what happens? Life goes on. We get done with that. We get temptation, Mara, Satan, life experiences, the pain, the shame, the hurt, the things that are there. Is it healed? Are we falling back into it? Have we gotten away from it? The temptation is there. What we have to do to go on the inward journey to begin healing those things. What does Jesus do? He's going on a healing and wiping out. That's what we're doing up here. It's like a myth, crossing the threshold and going in to destroy things to get the golden fleece. All right, so that's the pathway then. You become the person that leaves the past behind, turn inward, spend the time till it resolves, go through the temptation process. It's going to happen. You have to survive that temptation process. Do you leave it behind? Is it a habit? Is it something that you're an addiction? Is it something that you're just so habitually caught up in? Is it, whatever it may be, do you fall back into it or do you leave it behind? That's it. The temptation has to be defeated of whatever it is that you're trying to leave behind. All right, and then as you go on, what we're going to do is we're going to find the disciples. There's 12 disciples, and we're going to find that, like Jason and the Argonauts, when he's getting ready to go, he gathers up the Argonauts. We're going to see Buddha, like I said here, gathered up the other monks. Jesus gathering up his disciples. In all cases, they're going to supply the names. And if you go to their culture and what those names mean at the time, the names had meanings to them. So what do we have with, the 12 disciples is there's going to be, I'm not going to outline them here. We can look them up if you want to, but like one will be like balance. Another one stands for justice. Another one is like very strong and firm, the Another one is meek. There's always somebody in there that is like going to, like Judas. We had gosh, I can't remember his name. Is Pelias' son in with the Argonauts when they were sailing? He was a spy. If you go to see the same template used in Star Wars, you're going to see C-3PO as that group of person. Luke was the one that was called. You become Luke right there. He followed that same template that it was identified by Joseph Campbell, who spotted these repeating patterns in the stories from antiquity, myth and religion both. He kind of didn't get into the religion much. He stayed very mythical with it and stayed very analogous. But the reason the stories all feature that is because, think of it, it's all playing out in the theater of your mind. And no matter what, we know what to do. We know what we're supposed to do. We're strong. We're committed. We know right from wrong, all that kind of stuff. But then when you go after it, you got doubts. The closer you get to it, the more afraid you get of, I've got to resolve this issue. I don't like it. There's something there. There's a part of us that always has doubts. And we need to destroy those doubts. And that's what happens to those doubts at the end of the stories. That one bad element that's along is gone. I should actually point out a few. I won't get into all of them because it just gets too long and boring. But John, the name John, was one of the disciples. Grace and mercy, meekness and compassion, fertility, fruitfulness, and love. Simon represents hearing, hearkening, obeying, understanding. Remember, these are inner qualities that we need to go face our early self. Bartholomew, furrowed, plowed, prepared for seed. The mind is the garden. We're going to have to go prepare our mind for something new. Judas was the betrayer and hanged himself in the end. Iscariot, the surname, man of the cities, hostile encounters, man of conveniences. Okay, and that's a part of us that in the end, what happened is that Judas did take his own life, so that represents being gone in the end. After all is done, the bad element, the doubts, all of that have been set aside. In fact, if you can kind of wrap your mind around this idea right here, it's very foreign to people until you see the repetition of the material, until you can understand the conceptual nature. But the disciples represent inner qualities that you know are there, but what do you need to do? You need to employ them. They've been there all along, but just not in use. We've been living life just bouncing off of life experiences instead of going, wow, I'm judging everything instead of disconnecting from it, and I'm living through this mess. So those are the qualities we need. The earliest this appears in the Bible is in chapter 6 in Genesis, where the sons of God come down and violate or have sex with basically the beautiful daughters of men. And as a result, there's big, large men of renown. At that point in time is when the earth went corrupt and God needed to destroy it. What that means is that this is my earth. And my higher awareness needs to come in and go, those are your memories, dude. You're living through your freaking memories. You got to stop doing that. So there's a psychological pathway being held here, but those beautiful daughters represent what? This is in a mental hierarchy. My consciousness is the man. My inner self is the female, Eve, male and female. Inner part is a product of the male, right? She comes from the male. That means our decision-making process creates that inner self. The offspring are all of our values and qualities and things like that. And at first, they're beautiful daughters. They're not corrupt. But what happens? They became corrupted. So down here, what we have is in the disciples is going back and recovering what would have one time, thousands of years, maybe 1,500, years prior to this, was called the beautiful daughters of men, is an analogous term. And if you went back further to Babylonian creation, the Enuma Elish, you would find out it was the gods created that became raucous and had to be destroyed. They're all ways of carrying that same idea that these inner qualities at first need to be managed. We start off wild, not knowing, not being trained, not understanding, not comprehending. And when we get to a point where we do, this is what we do right here. This is the material. But if you dig into it, you find out that it is all, these stories are based on the human psychology, how you come about, how life happens, how cyclical pain occurs, how it's a struggle to leave it behind, how you must move on from there. We would see that in the Exodus story. what do we have? The calling. Moses is called by God on Mount Horeb. You must go. There's a denial of the call. No, he tells him 3 times, I can't do it. Supernatural aid. He gets his staff converted into a big, huge magic wand. Crossing the threshold. Oh, well, no. Struggle, cyclical pain. Plagues repeating. Struggle to leave. Pharaoh says, you can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. What is that? A struggle to leave the past. Crossing the threshold, we're going to go through the Red Sea. Spend 40 years in the desert. They're following a pattern of human life. Think about this as conceptual parts of a story. The Israelites, if that's me, if this represents me in turning inward, I'm going to cross a threshold and go 40 years in the desert. Jesus is going to go through a baptism and then spend 40 days in the wilderness. Do you see the commonality between those? Not what's different, but what's the same. We're looking for the concept that they share, not the differences that keep them apart. We're trying to interpret them. You can consider the verbiage, the wrapping paper. We've got to look inside. Okay, well, I think that's going to be it for this video. Do you see that Buddha and Jesus, and you know what? They're not the only two. Hero of 1,000 faces, Joseph Campbell. They're just a couple in a history of called heroes. What happened to Jesus, though? It's a morphing of the God of Abraham. Yeah, the son of the. Okay, so it all fits if you interpret it, but if you don't interpret it, and I'm not going to do that here. It has to do with the mental hierarchy, the higher awareness, the consciousness, the subconscious, the bundle of memories. All of that are parts of the story that if you bring it up here, you have to know what to do. If not, you can just think it's whatever it is out there. But all right, that's it for this video. I claim that Jesus is a very common monomyth character, hero of 1,000 faces, Joseph Campbell. He really is. The fact that he stands out in such a significant way as a religious figure has to do with the psychology of the human mind and the belief in something that is supernatural that makes somebody feel better. Truth is not significant. Feelings are significant. I'll just believe in something that makes me feel better. That becomes the truth. Imagine this for a second. You take Buddhism and you look at the Buddha and you say, you know what? Guess what? We've learned that all we have to do is worship the Buddha and he's going to come back and give me my nirvana. I'll just do that instead. I'm not going to follow his path. I'm just going to worship him and wait for that to happen. That's exactly what Christianity is doing. There you go. The truth seeker really is not going to do that. They're going to say, I don't care what I feel like. I want to analyze this and examine it. Is it really true that way? So, yeah, there's just going to be differences in comprehension in the way that we manage the material. And the people that can get through the interpretation, it's like reading fables. They mean something. They're not just face value. How do you show me a Christian who can explain to me what it means to the meek will inherit the earth? Blessed are the poor. Tell me what those mean. They don't even read that stuff. All right. That's because they don't know how to understand Buddha in a religious genre of psychological, mythology-based teaching. Here, let's think about this, something very simple for a minute. Just think of a time in your life, or maybe even now, where life is going on and something is just nagging at you. It's just really bugging you. You don't like it. It's making you feel bad. What do? It nags on you every day. Here's what you do. If you go to the altar to leave a gift, and while you're there, you recall you have aught against your brother, go resolve the aught. Don't leave your gift. Go resolve the aught, then come back and give your gift. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you in secret. What is that? That's a psychological teaching. Why are you bringing a gift to the altar? You want a better life. You want a better life, and while you want a better life, you're sitting there thinking, man, I got stuff that's bugging the hell out of me. Stop looking for a better life, go resolve that stuff, and then come back and you're going to have the better life automatically. That's what it means. If you don't understand that, you can worship it and never interact with it. It's very crucial to understand Jesus and to know that everything he says, 100% of it is cryptic. He's a guru. He's a sage. They don't teach in plain language. Anyway, all right, so there you have it. Jesus is a worshipped guru. And it'll hold people over until they're gone. But in the meantime, it's also being used currently. It's very morphed. It's all over the place. And since it really only requires that you believe in God and the values, really, that they're all over the place, really, with respect to values. People that are Christians say and do things that are just not okay with me. I would not be around people like that. Not their hatred and judgment of other people while they think themselves, since I'm a Christian, I can just go ahead and judge you and demonize you anyway, which is exactly what happens. I'm not that kind of a person, though. I can't be a Christian. I can't demonize other people just because they're born somewhere else. I might demonize them for being assholes and for hurting people and killing people, but that doesn't, their race doesn't matter in that case. It's their conduct that does. You judge what's bad, not just the people. One person does something, they're all that way. It's not that way. If I look at Islam, I see what's bad there. They're not terrorists, but some terrorists emerged from there. But if I step outside of Christianity and look at it, I go, wow, those Americans are terrorists. They're just on such a big, huge scale, they justify it. They come in and wipe out things that are just, same thing, just bigger. So you don't call them terrorists anymore. You call them something else and you justify it. Yeah, that's, think. Jesus didn't teach that. He's not about that. All right, well, that's it for this video. Return Jesus to his Buddhahood. He found his Buddha nature and called it a Christ nature. He found the kingdom of heaven within. He found Nirvana. See you in the next video.